Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talking Transmission, the podcast where we discuss all things communication theory. I am your host, Stephanie Swain, and today we'll be diving into the topic of cultivation theory. This renowned sociological and communications paradigm is used to investigate the long-term consequences of media, particularly television. Historically, this theory was developed by George Gerbner, a professor of communication, who provided a macro-level explanation of the impacts of mass media. In the early 1970s, he formed a research team to assist him in conducting a number of empirical tests of his explanation over the course of decades, which eventually led to the development of this theory. The fact that this theory is developed as a macro systems approach, emphasizing long-term effects on massive aggregates like the public and institutions, or mass media organizations, is crucial to emphasize. It primarily concentrates on information and opinions that were progressively formed in a population that was continually exposed to media messages in everyday life. Cultivation theory is recognized as relating to the meaning of media messages across all genres and mediums. Yet this hypothesis was only examined using television as the applied media type. Since the application of television was the main area of Gerbner's attention, according to the theory, people are more inclined to maintain a view of reality that is more similar or aligned to how television portrays reality the more they watch. So this theory is extremely controversial and holds little empirical evidence and validity as well. The institution, message, and effects components make up the theory's three primary parts. The institution is a component the media constructs and disseminates as a symbolic environment that reflects societal values, norms, cultures, preferences, and habits. The second component, regardless of genre or medium, the message, contains similarities in the meaning conveyed across media. Thirdly, the effects section addresses the idea that more media exposure will encourage people to have opinions that are similar to those in the media. These cultivated beliefs are not objective. Rather, they are reflections of media patterns and representations. So now I'm going to bring in a couple examples because I know that this theory can be confusing to some. So let me just go ahead and clarify some of those aspects for you. So since television depicts mainstream societal practices, values, and norms, and so forth, this theory can be applied to a demographic of viewers who are exposed to an abundance of television, and thus dictates their perspective on the world. More exclusively, because what is depicted on television is aligned with someone's perspective, someone who watches large quantities of TV may think that there is more crime than there actually is. So, people who watch a lot of violent television are considerably more likely to be terrified of going out alone at night for fear of being mugged, robbed, or even killed. Another example of how cultivation theory applies to viewers is also their view on stereotyping certain races or genders to perpetrators or figures of authority and assigning an identity based on assumptions cultivated through media. In a 2007 study uncovered by Dixon, unidentified suspects were more likely to think an unidentified perpetrator was black as opposed to white, and they also assumed that an unidentified officer were to be white over black. From these assumptions, it comes into question whether the cultivation theory can be applied to this frame of thinking. Does what we watch and how much we watch affect our ideals and point of views of the world and how it works? Yes, it does. These examples are critical in understanding how this theory enforces ideas of what we intake through media, as it has such a large impact on our perceptions. Those with heavy viewing habits are especially suspicious of others and likely to expect the worst. It is considerably more common for those who watch a lot of violent television to be terrified of what's out there and who is lurking around dark corners. These cultivation effects documented reinforce the theory's main ideas. Television, which tells most of stories in our society, has an impact on not just individual ideas but also on society as a whole, because it is the main source of popular culture. Despite individual variances, among people who watch a lot of television, there are relatively common outlooks and values that television cultivates, as it has become the dominant or mainstream culture of civilization. These examples properly illustrate the notion as they relate to Gerbner's use of heavy and light observers. Gerbner used the phrase mean world syndrome to describe how television's integrated programming, which penetrates across all spheres of modern society, encourages individuals to share worldviews and perceptions of reality amid otherwise disparate social groupings. The heavier viewer of television is more likely to contract mean world syndrome. All in all, how much you expose yourself to the media plays a vital role in your perspective of the world. The main goal of cultivation theory is to comprehend how repeated exposure to television programming and its recurrent patterns of messages and pictures might influence people's shared beliefs about the outside world. This theory is pertinent for many reasons, and the examples I showed about people being more fearful and also about how it applies to their view of others in stereotyping based on race or gender completely reinforces the idea of the cultivation theory and how it applies to anyone's life that intakes media. Whether you're a heavy or light viewer, this is a pertinent theory to understand. And with the advancement of technology, particularly in the sectors of communication and social media and transportation, information and ideas are spread in an instant. So I think it's crucial to keep an eye out on our surroundings and how media affects us, because information is constantly and exponentially streaming around us. So mass media are the information carriers with the broadest audience and the most penetration. So these messages occasionally do make an effort to accurately depict media, but all in all, this theory reinforces that the media is telling a story that's not always true to what reality is. So it's our job to be aware of what we're intaking, to fact check, to check the sources, and make sure we are not easily influenced. So the problem arises when those reflections aren't true to the production of our considerations, and they turn into warped or incomplete reflections of life or events rather than necessary or correct ones. It's crucial that media literate people should evaluate the messages in the mass media so they are aware of any potential biases or agenda setting and how it might take an effect of what they're believing. So be aware of this, warn others, tell your friends and family, because certain groups are more vulnerable to messages of mass media than others. So explore this topic by yourself and be wary of what you're intaking, how much you're intaking, and be aware if there's any biases or leaning views on this, because the cultivation theory clearly explains how the three components go together and reflect our beliefs, because these cultivated beliefs, again, are not objective. They are reflections of media patterns and representations. Well, folks, I had a wonderful time with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this week's discussion on cultivation theory, and we'll see you next time on Talking Transmission.